The silent addiction to emotional chaos and why peace feels uncomfortable to your nervous system. Most people claim they want peace, but when peace finally arrives, they unconsciously sabotage it. They pray for calm relationships, stable routines, emotional clarity, and internal stillness. Yet the moment life stops feeling chaotic, something inside them becomes restless. Silence feels suspicious. Stability feels boring. Healthy love feels unfamiliar. Rest feels undeserved. The nervous system that spent years surviving in unpredictability often struggles to trust safety when it finally appears. This is the hidden psychological trap many people never recognize. They are not addicted to suffering itself. They are addicted to the emotional intensity that suffering creates. The modern world quietly reinforces this addiction every single day. Social media rewards outrage. News cycles thrive on panic. Entertainment glorifies drama. Relationships are often built around emotional turbulence rather than emotional safety. Many individuals grow up in environments where stress becomes normalized so deeply that chaos starts feeling emotionally familiar. The body adapts to constant tension until peace itself begins to feel emotionally foreign. When the nervous system spends years operating in survival mode, adrenaline becomes mistaken for aliveness. Cortisol becomes mistaken for motivation. Emotional instability becomes mistaken for passion. This is why many people unconsciously recreate the exact situations they claim to hate. The person who says they want healthy relationships keeps choosing emotionally unavailable partners. The person who says they want rest overloads their schedule until exhaustion feels normal again. The person who says they want clarity floods themselves with distractions because silence forces them to confront unresolved emotions they have spent years avoiding. The brain does not always choose what is healthy. It often chooses what is familiar. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. At least chaos is predictable. At least dysfunction is recognizable. At least emotional instability feels known. Peace, however, requires vulnerability. Peace requires trust. Peace removes distractions and forces people to sit with themselves without the noise they once used to escape. For many individuals, this is terrifying. When life finally becomes calm, unresolved grief surfaces. Old insecurities surface. Emotional emptiness surfaces. Without constant crisis to focus on, people suddenly hear the internal wounds they spent years drowning out through busyness, conflict, stimulation, or overachievement. This is why healing initially feels uncomfortable instead of euphoric. The nervous system must slowly learn that safety is not a threat. This process can feel deeply unnatural at first. A calm environment may feel emotionally wrong simply because the body has become conditioned to expect tension. Healthy communication may feel suspicious because manipulation once felt normal. Rest may produce guilt because productivity became tied to self-worth. Peace may feel emotionally flat because the body became chemically attached to emotional highs and lows. Many people mistake this discomfort as evidence that something is missing. In reality, their nervous system is simply detoxing from chronic overstimulation. The body cannot instantly transition from years of hypervigilance into deep regulation overnight. Healing requires retraining emotional patterns that were repeated thousands of times. This is why self-sabotage often appears immediately after progress. The nervous system interprets unfamiliar stability as danger and instinctively attempts to return to emotional patterns it already understands. This explains why some individuals start unnecessary arguments the moment relationships become healthy. Chaos restores emotional familiarity. Others procrastinate when opportunities finally appear because success threatens the identity built around struggle. Some people abandon peaceful routines because calmness exposes how emotionally exhausted they truly are underneath constant activity. Others continuously consume digital stimulation because stillness forces them to confront loneliness, grief, or fear they have not fully processed. Modern culture rarely encourages true nervous system healing because overstimulation has become profitable. Attention is monetized through outrage, urgency, fear, comparison, and emotional triggering. The human mind is constantly pulled into cycles of reaction rather than reflection. Endless notifications condition people to remain psychologically fragmented. Silence becomes uncomfortable because the brain becomes addicted to stimulation spikes. Many individuals can no longer sit quietly for even a few minutes without instinctively reaching for distraction. Stillness now feels threatening because it interrupts the emotional noise people unconsciously depend on. The tragedy is that many individuals spend years trying to improve their lives externally, while never addressing the internal addiction to emotional chaos operating underneath their behavior. They change jobs, relationships, cities, goals, routines, and environments. But the same emotional cycles continue appearing because the nervous system itself still associates stress with identity. Without internal healing, external changes rarely create lasting peace. This is why true healing requires more than positive thinking. It requires nervous system recalibration. The body must gradually experience safety consistently enough to stop expecting disaster. This process is deeply physical as well as emotional. Healing is not merely intellectual. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Chronic stress reshapes breathing patterns, muscle tension, sleep cycles, digestion, focus, and emotional regulation. Many people are carrying years of accumulated survival responses without realizing how deeply those patterns influence their daily behavior. One of the clearest signs of emotional chaos addiction is the inability to rest without guilt. When someone's identity becomes built around constant productivity, slowing down feels emotionally unsafe. Stillness creates anxiety because self-worth has become attached to output. Rest is interpreted as laziness rather than restoration. The person may appear highly functional externally while remaining internally exhausted. They are constantly doing because stopping would force them to confront emotional realities they have been outrunning through performance. Another sign is emotional overanalysis. Some individuals remain trapped in perpetual mental problem solving because uncertainty feels intolerable. The brain constantly scans for potential danger even in safe environments. Relaxation becomes difficult because hypervigilance feels necessary for survival. Their mind never fully powers down. They may confuse overthinking with preparation when it is actually anxiety searching endlessly for control. This emotional conditioning also affects relationships profoundly. Healthy love often feels emotionally quieter than toxic attachment. There is less unpredictability, less panic, less emotional whiplash. To a dysregulated nervous system, this calmness may initially feel boring, even though it is actually safety. Many individuals unconsciously equate emotional intensity with emotional depth because chaos trained them to associate love with instability. As a result, peaceful relationships can feel emotionally unfamiliar until healing occurs. The same pattern appears in identity itself. Many people become emotionally attached to struggle because struggle gave them purpose, recognition, or survival significance. If someone has spent years defining themselves through hardship, healing can create an identity crisis. Who are they without the chaos? Who are they without constantly fixing problems? Who are they without being needed, rescuing others, or surviving emotional storms? Sometimes people unconsciously cling to dysfunction because dysfunction became intertwined with identity. Healing requires grieving these old emotional identities. The nervous system must learn that peace does not erase meaning. Calmness does not erase purpose. Rest does not erase worth. Safety does not erase depth. In fact, true peace often allows the deepest parts of a person to finally emerge without fear. One of the most important steps in breaking the addiction to emotional chaos is learning to tolerate stillness long enough for regulation to occur. At first, stillness may feel unbearable. The urge to escape into distraction, conflict, stimulation, or productivity may become intense. But every moment spent remaining present without fleeing teaches the nervous system that safety can be trusted. This gradually expands emotional capacity. Another critical shift involves redefining excitement itself. Many people have been conditioned to seek adrenaline rather than fulfillment. But sustainable joy rarely feels explosive. Healthy peace is quieter. It is steady rather than dramatic. It feels grounding instead of intoxicating. The nervous system initially interprets this steadiness as emotional emptiness because it lacks the chemical spikes associated with chaos. Over time, however, the body begins recognizing calmness as nourishment instead of deprivation. Boundaries also become essential during this process. People addicted to emotional chaos often attract relationships, environments, and media that reinforce dysregulation. Constant negativity, manipulation, urgency, and overstimulation keep the nervous system trapped in survival mode. Healing requires intentionally protecting internal peace, even when chaos feels emotionally magnetic. This may involve reducing exposure to draining relationships, limiting digital overload, prioritizing sleep, practicing silence, and creating environments that support regulation instead of agitation. Self-compassion is equally important because many individuals criticize themselves for struggling to feel safe and peace. But these patterns were learned through repetition and survival adaptation. The nervous system developed them for protection, even if they are no longer beneficial. Healing does not happen through shame. It happens through consistent safety, awareness, patience, and gradual rewiring. The deeper truth is that many people do not actually fear failure as much as they fear peace. Failure feels familiar. Chaos feels familiar. Struggle feels familiar. Peace, however, requires surrendering the emotional identities built around survival. It requires trusting that life does not always need to hurt in order to feel meaningful. It requires believing that calmness is not emptiness. It is stability. This is why healing often feels less like becoming someone new and more like finally allowing the body to stop bracing for impact. The nervous system slowly stops scanning for danger everywhere. Breathing softens, reactions slow down, sleep deepens. Thoughts become clearer, presence becomes easier, relationships become less performative. Joy stops feeling suspicious. The body no longer interprets peace as a threat that must be destroyed. Beloved, if peace currently feels uncomfortable, it does not mean you are broken. It may simply mean your nervous system has spent too long surviving environments that taught you chaos was normal. The discomfort of healing is not evidence that you should return to dysfunction. It is evidence that your body is learning a completely different way of existing. Stay long enough in the calm for your soul to remember that safety was never supposed to feel foreign.